Hello. In the Crown of Aragon 639 years ago, it was April 4th, 1387. My name is Jonathan Seyfried. I'm a PhD candidate in history at the University of New Mexico, and this is the Historian's Notebook, a podcast about how history gets made. Season 1 is titled Multcara Companiona. We're looking at a document from each day of the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violant de Bar. Let's begin today's document. Today we have two letters dated April 4th, and they're about the same topic to two different people, written by Violant and in her Sacratorum register. And they relate back to something we talked about all the way back on February 28th, which is this effort to arrange a marriage for Joan and Violant's daughter, who's known as Yolande of Aragon. This marriage is eventually successful. It takes place in the year 1400, so Joan does not live to see this marriage actually happen. But the negotiations are really long. I think it's going to be quite some time before the negotiations are finalized. And we can start to see the reason why in today's documents. Back on February 28th, we basically had the initiation of the marriage negotiations. We had Violant authorizing Luchino Scarampi, their Genoese financier, to carry out the terms of the negotiations in Avignon. Avignon at this time was the seat of the papacy for Pope Clement VII, who has gone down in history as the anti-pope, but from the point of view of Joan and Violant, it was the pope in Rome who was the anti-pope at this time. We are talking about a moment in the Great Western Schism when there were two popes and different polities around Western Europe had to choose which one they thought was the real pope, and they made those choices a lot of times based on politics because there was not really much doctrinal difference between the two popes. So today's documents are written over a month into this marriage negotiation process in Avignon. And one of the documents is from Violant to the Pope himself. It's super short. It's in Latin. Basically is just saying, hey, don't forget that Luchino Scarampi has the authority to negotiate for me, as if it was coming from my own voice. Nostro proprio is in there. And then there's some damage to the document, so I can't quite figure out exactly what she is saying in terms of the exact word choice that she's making, but it's really clear that in this short 5-line letter on folio 96R, Violant is saying to the Pope, hey, these marriage negotiations, they are something that Scarampi really can be authorized to carry out. I'm not quite sure why this letter is so necessary, because she and also Joan wrote credential letters for Scarampi back on February 28th. But something has hit a snag. It's not clear why there has been an obstacle, and the next letter is an effort to break through that snag or that barrier, and I just don't understand why it's written in the way that it's written. It's very vague and talks around the issue. What is the word for that? Is it like circumloquacious? Oh gosh, I don't even know. But basically, it's talking about how the Queen of Naples doesn't care what I know. Whoa, Shadow is very mad that the Queen of Naples doesn't care what the Pope has to say. It's really quite surprising to see in the letter this blatant statement of somehow Violant has heard that the Queen of Naples doesn't care about the Pope's opinions on things. That's what it seems to read to me to say. There's actually a journal article by Maria Teresa Ferrer y Maliol and Carlos Vela Aulesa that is about Luchino Scarampi, and this letter is included in the appendix, which is basically a nice long list of documents about Luchino Scarampi, and they summarize in the appendix. They don't transcribe it, they summarize it, and even they leave it a little bit ambiguous as to what is being said here in its line 7. So here, oh actually wait, hold on. Well, line 7 if you count La Reina. So there's this sentence that actually begins at the end of line 6. E els ha replicat que la reina de Naples no cura. That she does not care, that she doesn't have a concern about something. And I think that it's, well, okay, wait. The sentence goes on. There's like a comma. Ne els person seguent cure or curet en aquest fet del and it looks like that could be Papa, like of the Pope. So it seems like what's being written here, and Ferrer y Mayol and Vela Aulesa, they also seem to interpret this as Violant has heard that the Queen of Naples doesn't care what the Pope is saying, and instead she's looking for a direct answer from Joan and Violant themselves. It gets even more strange when we start to dig into just who the Queen of Naples is at this time, because actually the Queen of Naples in this letter is not in Naples, does not really rule Naples, and the King of Naples is dead, the king that made her the Queen of Naples, and there's actually a different person who's the actual political leader of the Kingdom of Naples at this time. So this is somebody in exile, the Queen of Naples, who is the main negotiator, it seems, for the other party in this marriage negotiation. All right, we gotta just take a step back and really break down the cast of characters here. So let's just fill out the cast of characters on the Crown of Aragon side. We've got King Joan, we've got Queen Violant, their main representative, Luchino Scarampi, who, by the way, is not from the Crown of Aragon originally. He is Genoese, and he is a source of cash for Joan and Violant. He's a real money man, a kind of fixer, financier. The person that Joan and Violant are trying to get the marriage arranged for is their daughter, who is known in history as Yolande of Aragon. And in fact, she eventually does get married to the person that they're trying to arrange this marriage for. But it's much later, in the year 1400. But at this time, Yolande of Aragon is only 6 years old. All right, let's shift to the other side, the Kingdom of Naples side. But I think it's actually more accurate to call this side the Anjou side. The person that they are trying to have Yolande of Aragon get into a marriage contract with is at this time 10 years old, and he's known in history as Louis II of Anjou. Louis II of Anjou, his parents are Louis I of Anjou and Marie de Blois. Marie de Blois is, I think, the person who in this letter is referred to as the Queen of Naples. Louis I had died about 3 years before, in 1384, and he had attempted to wrest back control of the Kingdom of Naples from Hungarians. And it's just so convoluted about, but currently at this time in 1387, the person who is ruling Naples is from the royal family of the Kingdom of Hungary. Okay, actually I have to qualify that. It's not that he was born as the Prince of Hungary or even lived in Hungary. It's just that he's named Ladislaus, and that's because his parents had been in Hungary, even though I think they're not originally Hungarian. It is so confusing. So what happened in the Kingdom of Naples was that there was a really interesting queen named Joanna I, and her reign was really tumultuous, but there's a fantastic book out about her recently by Elizabeth Castine, and it's so fascinating to see how this powerful woman was able to do some pretty deft political maneuvering during her life, perhaps killing one of her husbands, and was really a very interesting and powerful queen. And she ruled. There was no husband. She had a marriage negotiation where she was okay, I will marry this guy as long as he does not get to govern at all, and I'm the one who's going to continue to govern the Kingdom of Naples. So there was a lot of contestation about this, a lot of negotiations about succession and marriage in the Kingdom of Naples that actually took place in Avignon. So at one point, Joanna of Naples is in Avignon stating her case. It's at one point where Kingdom of Naples was invaded by her opponents and she was kind of in exile. This is all earlier. This is all before this year, 1387, by at least around a decade or so. So anyway, there's all this tumultuous history of the Kingdom of Naples, and Louis I was trying to get control of the Kingdom of Naples. He's a member of the French royal family, the Duke of Anjou, and he doesn't quite succeed. Louis II, eventually, when he grows up, because in 1387 he's 10 years old, he will almost get it. He will almost get back the Kingdom of Naples, but doesn't quite manage to do it. And Ladislaus, the person who is currently actually ruling the Kingdom of Naples, really sticks in there all the way, I think, up until a decade into the 15th century. So Louis II is the son of a Duke of Anjou, and that's a pretty powerful position in the constellation of dukes in the Kingdom of France. So this is a high status match, and it does bring up the possibility that if Yolande of Aragon is successfully married to Louis II of Anjou, and then together they're able to get control of the Kingdom of Naples, then they've got a real big territorial claim in that region, southern Italy, because there's already a claim that the Crown of Aragon has for Sicily. So this is a move to bolster and increase the power of the Crown of Aragon as a Mediterranean force, a Mediterranean player. So that is the reasoning behind this choice. It's also a way to strengthen the ties between the Crown of Aragon and the Kingdom of France, which is something Joanne is always excited about. The way that this ends up happening in the subsequent decades really brings that part of it to bear. No, it's not the case that Yolande of Aragon actually gets to rule as the Queen of Naples de facto. She does call herself the Queen of Naples, but they're not actually in Naples, and they're not able to, get control of it. But the daughter, really kind of fast forwarding here, the daughter of Yolande of Aragon and Louis II of Anjou actually does then marry the King of France and becomes Queen of France. So here we have Violant, who lives quite a long time after Joanne. She lives until about 1430. She lives long enough to see her granddaughter become the Queen of France. So it really does eventually work out. But there are some real dips and, low points in the story. After Joanne dies, Violant as a widowed queen, has some really rough moments. But in the end, she's able to see this plan bear fruit. So this is all a very reasonable thing to pursue in terms of the power politics that are involved in marriage negotiations. This particular document is expressing some frustration, that's for sure, that the negotiations are getting derailed for some reason by what the Pope wants and how Marie de Blois, the Queen of Naples, I certainly hope I've got that right, because I'm not sure, but Marie de Blois, or whoever is being referred to here by the title Queen of Naples, is in some kind of difference of opinion with what the Pope's involvement is going to be. And so there's some kind of snag in the logistics of who has a say in the terms of this marriage negotiation. And that is the best I can do based on what I'm seeing in this letter, which is a lot of text of the letter is, I heard that she said this, and now the Pope wants this, and we're going to say this if she says that. So this letter is full of circumlocution, which is a word that I had so much trouble saying I had to do some re-recording. I was trying to use it in sort of like a adjectival form, it's very circumloquacious. It was so difficult. Oh my gosh. All right, well, that's a little behind the scenes of what it's like to record a podcast. Sometimes you hit a word that you're trying to say, and it just is you have to go back and record 4 times. Oh. All right, one last detail about today's documents that I want to bring up is the AI usage. So today is the first time that I am utilizing the automatic text recognition big data product that I was able to generate by using OpenClaw. So what happened is for register 2056, I had OpenClaw do a one after the other bulk process of uploading each of the images in the register to Gemini, getting a transcription, then independently going to Claude, uploading the image to get a transcription from Claude, and then having Claude reconcile the two. And it generated then the same thing that I would get from stage 2 in my process with Claude when I would just do these things on my own, one by one. The thing that's missing, that is, I think, pretty important actually, is that at that moment after Claude did a reconciliation, I would look it over and I would identify some things that both of them were getting wrong, and then say, hey, this is going to be very helpful for the meaning of the document. And then Claude would do stage 3, which would be one final version of the transcription and then a translation into English, along with notes about persistent ambiguities or things that are still not clear. So that stage 3 process is not one that I can include in the automation because it's automated. This whole all 300 images are done automatically through the process being managed by OpenClaw, and I am not able to jump in there and save in the process the large language models from persisting in some kind of error. So the overall product that comes out is less usable than when I do it myself, but it's kind of like a cost-benefit analysis question because I save time. I save a lot of time when I'm able to get an entire register with processed in a way. So it's kind of like, a trade-off. And so today's transcription and translation work that I was reviewing, it was okay. It was not really as great as I would like, but it actually did the job pretty well. I kind of went over this pretty closely, and in this particular document, the automated process generated a result that gave me a good idea of the content. It's a good first pass kind of product in terms of its transcription and translation. It would never be good enough for something like a critical edition. If I were to actually use this in a dissertation or a journal article, I would absolutely go over it again and spend much more time with it in order to clarify some of that circumlocution and to make sure that there hasn't been any mistranscribing in the work done by that AI process. So I will post onto today's webpage the text file that was generated through that OpenClaw managed process. So you can take a look at how it comes out. And it's just one file instead of the 3 different PDFs that I would usually have to post in order to document my AI usage. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Historian's Notebook, Season 1, Molt cara compagnona. If you are leaving with more questions than you arrived with, I've done my job. Because remember, the motto of The Historian's Notebook is dissatisfaction guaranteed. Visit the website to see an image of today's document and additional show notes, and listen again tomorrow to hear about the next day in the first year of the reign of King Joan I of Aragon and Queen Violante de Bar. In the meantime, take care.